This car, like me, was built in a lab, stayed in a lab for its entire life, and will die in a lab. Hello and welcome to today's edition of the Car Nerd Talks. I'm Jason Hassett, the Car Nerd, and today we're going to be talking about a very special car which unfortunately never had entered production, and only 16 of these were made. And I'm, of course, if you haven't guessed already, talking about the Mercedes C111. This car, like me, was built in a lab, stayed in a lab for its entire life, and will die in a lab. Let's jump into it, but before I do, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching. I'm going to be doing daily content from now on, and if you're reading this on DriveTribe, I would really appreciate it if you followed me on there as well, because I'm pumping out as much content as I possibly can. Now, let's jump into it. In the 1960s, Mercedes needed a test bed for their new engines and some of their new features. For example, they were working on new Gullwing doors, new types of air conditioning, new types of direct injection, new types of plush leather interiors, and they wanted a car just to test all of these things. And the C111 was designed and built as a test bed for all of these engines and everything else. Primarily what they wanted to test, and I'll get onto in a minute, was a new type of Wankel engine. And no, that's not a funny word. Wankel is a type of engine with rotary instead of pistons, which I'll get into in a moment. So we'll talk about that Wankel in a few. But this car was designed in the late 1960s as this test bed and was unveiled with the Series 1 at the 1969 Frankfurt Auto Show, where it garnered so much attention that apparently and allegedly people were handing over blank checks, which Mercedes still have in their archive, to basically say, I want one of these. Unfortunately, it never entered production, but it was an incredibly cool looking car. In terms of looks, this car does not look anything like anything else Mercedes has made. It looks more like a Lamborghini or a Ferrari of the time. It's very Italian looking, and there's no good reason for that, because the designer was a guy called Bruno Sacco, and he would go on to have his most significant design in the Mercedes 190, which you're probably aware of. So this car had some very weird looks. It had pop-up headlamps, it had a dipped front nose, which was very un-Mercedes-esque. It had the incredible pop-up headlights that looked really, really cool. It was also made entirely of fiberglass, which was not something that Mercedes would do. And this is another reason why it wouldn't go into production. Mercedes liked steel and aluminium because their whole brand is around quality, and that's what they wanted. Another weird feature of this car was the struts at the back. So it kind of had these weird struts to show, or to surround the back engine. Just a very strange looking car altogether, and it also had the infamous Gullwing doors, which no car had had since the 300 SL before it, and Mercedes was looking for something to bring these back. Unfortunately, it didn't bring these back for quite some time. So yeah, just a very, very strange looking car, and a very strange thing for Bruno Sacco to design. And then when we got to the Series 3 and 4 later on in the 70s, you saw that this thing moved into kind of a more spaceship aluminium body design, and that car I do remember, because I remember having a toy of it, and it was quite a prolific Mercedes design at the time. Unfortunately, none of these went into production, and they were eventually all scrapped. Not scrapped, sorry, but put away somewhere. And they refused to ever sell one to the public. In fact, if one was crashed, they literally just scrapped it and threw it away. And 16 of these were produced during the lifetime of these experiments. So of course this car was designed primarily to test one of the engines, and what they first put into it was a Wankel engine, which was in the 1969 version. Now if you haven't heard of a Wankel engine, it's a rotary engine, so instead of the pistons firing up and down, there's a rotor inside that moves and keeps everything flowing. This makes them highly efficient in terms of power to weight ratio. Unfortunately, it never went into production with Mercedes because there was problems around efficiency, fuel consumption and reliability, and also during its lifetime of the C111, the fuel crisis would happen, and obviously fuel was a bit of an issue. People weren't buying these hypercars. But the first engine that went into this was a 3-rotor Wankel engine, which put out 230 brake horsepower and went up to 186 miles an hour. Now the second engine that they tested in this was similar to the first one. It was a Wankel engine as well, but this one had 4 rotors and pushed out a massive 350 brake horsepower. This thing got off the line very, very quickly and moved all the way up to 188 miles an hour, which was incredible for the time when you're thinking that this was 1970 or 71. So that is the second engine that went in there. The third engine that was placed in the C111 was a diesel. I didn't mistake that, it was actually a diesel, and on top of that it was a 5-cylinder diesel. I think they were just trying to get as many weird engines into this as they could. So they put a 5-cylinder 3-litre diesel into this car, but this engine had a lot more technology than any other diesels at the time, producing 228 horsepower. Fortunately, should I say, diesels produce a lot more torque than a standard petrol engine. Of course, electrics now have those completely beat. But this meant that they got the car in the Nardo ring to do 200 miles an hour. This is 200 miles an hour from a 1972 diesel engine. The fourth engine to go into this car was a 4.4-litre V8 diesel engine, which was absolutely incredible. And the only thing that was more incredible than this was the speed that it got. They managed to get this thing on the Nardo ring to do 250 miles per hour, which is incredible. In terms of performance, as I said, it varies because there was 4 different engine variants within this car. But as I told you in the last segment, and I guess there's no need for this segment, the car got up to 250 miles an hour on the Nardo ring, which is a stunning speed for a diesel at the time. Especially in 1970s when diesels were very primitive. They were usually used in commercial vehicles and nothing more. So this was some feat for a car at the time, and this was a very quick moving car. The result was that Mercedes had tested all of its engines. Unfortunately, due to the oil crisis, they never decided to put any one of these high-performance cars into production. And nowadays, they just sit in a museum and in Mercedes factory somewhere, which is unfortunate because they were very, very cool-looking cars. But they achieved what they needed to. They tested out engines for Mercedes and helped them test out new air conditioning units, which I'm sure made it into cars, as well as new plush leather interiors, which I'm sure made it into cars. Only 16, as I said, of these were ever made, but definitely one of the cool ones. And as with a lot of the things that I talk about, anything vintage, you can watch an entire rundown of this on Jay Leno's Garage, and I would definitely say to go ahead and watch that. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and thank you for reading this on Drive Tribe if that's where you saw this from. You can check out my profile in the description. Don't forget to join us tomorrow when we'll be talking about a Bugatti, and of course don't forget to watch the podcast, which will be up later this evening. And I have 3 guys, I have Alex, I have Charles, and I have Robert Percy, so don't forget to check that out. That's going to be cool, just 3 or 4 people just chatting about cars. So thank you again for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you tomorrow where we're going to be talking about a Bugatti.